Hello everybody, this is John from BestPriceNutrition.com. I'm here with Bruce, the head trainer for the Midwest Territory for Garden of Life. Today we're going to talk about the Vitamin Co Grow Bone System. For us, it's a huge seller. It's kind of become taken us by storm, so to speak, because when it first came out, I think Garden of Life, and I think you still have the DEXA-Scan Promise. You want to cover that?
We do something with this. It's called the Grow Bone Challenge. We basically are so confident in the results of this that we pretty much will guarantee that we'll double your money back. So the way this works is that you'll get a DEXA scan, checking the kind of the state of your bones, and then you take the product 6 of these boxes. So it's a 6-month regimen, and at the end of that, you get another DEXA scan to see how you did. And if you didn't grow bone, meaning if you didn't get an outright improvement, then we'll double your money back and pay for the scans. We're just that confident that we really will get the results.
That's very interesting, and that's in light of what I think there's commercials out there with Sally Field talking about.
The one body in your one life.
Yeah, yes. and then of course the voiceover comes over with a million side effects.
Yeah, right. Yeah, those bisphosphonate drugs. I mean, those really don't add bone-building minerals to your body. I mean, they really, if you are on those, you still need minerals and fat-soluble vitamins. So this is really a formula that's going more to the root of the problem.
You can't make bone out of nothing.
Right.
You actually need calcium.
Poisoning the osteoclasts and preventing the tear down is kind of how those drugs work. But in general, it's kind of a strategy that's turning out to have some problems.
And briefly, I just want to cover this because this is always, when I get questions sometimes from people, is, it's always the pharmaceutical industry versus the vitamin natural industry. And I don't always view it that way. I understand that sometimes if you're a doctor and somebody comes into you and they have high blood pressure and high cholesterol and these things, and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're going to tell them to eat right and exercise and sleep well, and they're not going to do it. Well, the next best thing is to give them said drug to make up for their laziness. That being said, with a pharmaceutical drug, I think the biggest difference is that they try and get down as specific as they can to target what the actual problem is. For instance, with the product to help with osteoporosis. The problem is that the body is not just a bunch of singular processes. They all rely on each other, so you're going to have a domino effect. I know you've had a good way of explaining that. You want to cover that?
I mean, I think that what we're looking at with this formula is trying to go into all of the different elements together. I mean, people have been taking calcium for a long, long time. We've had 30 years of calcium supplementation. And I think if the whole concept of just swallowing more calcium was going to be the end-all, be-all, that would have started working 20 years ago. But the reality is that it takes more than that. And there's, like you were just pointing out, our body has many feedback loops. And one of the most important that's emerged about this whole discussion is the role of vitamin K2 and vitamin D3. Especially vitamin K2. This is really the newest vitamin to come out, really since the first new vitamin since 1948. And it's basically a vitamin that really controls these binding proteins, which sounds maybe complex, but binding proteins is basically the machinery that takes those minerals from your blood and shuttles them into the osteocytes, the bone cells. We really want to make sure that we provide the bones with lots of these minerals. And so it turns out the fat-soluble vitamins, and particularly vitamin K2, has a lot to do with telling minerals where to go. And that means telling them to go to the bones and not to go to the kidneys or the heart or the joints. We don't want calcium going into the soft tissue. And that's what's emerged right now, is that all those binding proteins are a huge, huge missing link in our old strategies about using minerals to help our bones. It's turning out we really have to have those fat-soluble vitamins to be able to utilize and get any benefit from our calcium, no matter how soluble or cofactor rich. I mean, there's other minerals that play in there, like magnesium and silica and boron and strontium and many others. But in general, minerals in and of themselves need their activators, and that turns out to be the fat-soluble vitamins. They are very key to this discussion.
Now, real quick on the vitamin K you brought up, I mentioned this just because a lot of the people who buy this product happen to be older women, and it should be younger women taking it. And can men take this product?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, covering that a lot of these older women now, some of them may be on something like Coumadin or a blood thinner. Is vitamin K? I know typically if somebody's on that, is that something that
there's a lot of research about the Coumadin and the warfarins and blood-thinning drugs and how they'll interact with vitamin K. Vitamin K gets its name for coagulation, and so it's kind of a coagulation factor vitamin. And so traditionally, when they put people on a blood thinner, they'll tell them to really seriously avoid vitamin K.
Down to spinach.
Down to broccoli and spinach, even avoiding those greens. But in reality, K2 doesn't seem to affect the blood platelet stickiness very much at all. So while we can't really say that, I would say For those out there who are on blood thinners, you'll need to talk to your doctor. But in general, a lot of the preliminary data is turning out that K2 may in fact be very safe and maybe even beneficial for preventing calcification, a side effect of those drugs.
Now, what makes this unique? As you mentioned, a lot of, we've always, being in the industry, take your calcium, magnesium, and then, like you said, vitamin D, so CalMag-D, we thought, oh, that's the gold standard for, osteoporosis, and
Well, this is our third calcium formula. We've been doing this for a while, and in general, we've been kind of looking at what's happening with calciums, and when you look at the research in the last 15 years, you generally find that there's very rarely an outright improvement. You'll see improvements in bone mineral density, but it's usually only an improvement compared to the control group, meaning the group that's losing bone. I guess what I'm saying is, about as good as most calcium research gets is halting bone loss, not an outright improvement. So we're really trying to do something that's going to really build bone, actually turn back the hands of time, because typically people are losing 1% of bone mass per year if they're women over 30 or 40 years old.
And this is usually due to menopause.
Menopause, and there's a lot of different theories of what's going on with osteoporosis. I think it probably has something to do with the idea that we don't eat fat solubles. We're not eating organ meats and raw milk and cultured foods anymore. We're eating kind of the train wreck American diet. One of the things I also like to point out, we're one of the only 2 brands in the industry that use AlgaCal. And AlgaCal is a plant form of calcium, which is very different. People don't necessarily realize that almost every form of calcium out there is made from rocks. Whether it's lactate or citrate or gluconate or malate, they started with a rock, a limestone called carbonate, and then they actually react it, or they change it through they react it with different minerals to make it a citrate or a malate. So they take carbonate rocks and they react it with citric acid or lactic acid or malic acid to make those more solubilized forms of minerals. And they are more soluble. They get into the bloodstream better. And much has been made of solubility in the past 15 years. But I think what has emerged is that no matter how soluble those minerals are at getting into the bloodstream, they're not going to do us much good if we don't have some of the activators, and specifically the D3 and the K2 again. Those are turning out to be so important. And even the high calcium protocols, which we've done for many, many years, have really turned out often to not really perform all that well.
Okay. So in general, we're taking all the other cofactors that we need to absorb with these products. Now, what is in the GrowBone kit as opposed to somebody who's just going to buy
So everything we just
calcium?
talked about was actually just raw calcium. Now the GrowBone kit basically adds a strontium formula called Growth Factor S. It's primarily a strontium pill. And the idea with strontium is that this formula is not a lifetime. We don't want you to take this ongoing. This is a 6-month regimen. So it's basically just, you do that whole kit, and you can do it again maybe every few years, but we generally don't want people to just stay on it forever. It's not that it will really hurt them. There's actually great safety data on strontium, but there's kind of diminishing returns.
Sure.
There's a limit to how much strontium can do, and 6 months seems to load it in there pretty well. What strontium does is almost the exact opposite of those bisphosphonates that Sally Field talks about. These actually speed up the building crew. It's sort of like, the analogy I use is that if the raw calcium is all of your building materials to build a great structure, and a very comprehensive mix at that. It's going to say it's all of your boards and your bricks and your nails and your soffits and everything you need to build a great structure. Then the strontium, to use that analogy, would be like putting 30 extra guys on the job site and paying them overtime. They're going to speed up the turnover and the actual deposition of minerals into those osteocytes, meaning that they'll really speed up the turnover rate of how you mineralize your bones. So that's kind of a big part of this formula, that the strontium is kind of a rocket booster to help you utilize all of those fat-soluble vitamins and the minerals that are present in the raw calcium. The raw calcium is meant for anybody who wants all the cofactors and pieces of the puzzle. We really feel like this is the most comprehensive mix, and we really built it on studies. This is the clinically studied formula.
So moving forward, so somebody takes this for 6 months and they can move on to the raw calcium.
That's exactly right.
Or if you're somebody who maybe doesn't have osteoporosis yet, let's say you're young, in your 20s, female, or even a male who just wants to take a calcium product, you can start with this and you should be dotting your I's, crossing your T's, you've got it covered.
This should really halt bone loss better than really almost anything else out there, whereas the GrowBone system is very much what it says. It's growing, it's actually kind of turning back the hands.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I hope we answered all your questions. I know we've gotten a lot about this product. It's very, very popular. If you have any others, please feel free to post them in our blog or in the comments of the video. We're more than happy to answer them. Thanks again, Bruce. Appreciate you coming here, and thank you.